Okay. Then in that case, we can move on to the special presentations. So Schönn, since you're here, for anyone who doesn't know, he was the president of the 71st Assembly of the GPSA. So Schönn, I mean, you know the drill. You have about 10 minutes and you can share your screen if you'd like. I'll give you a warning in the chat when you're at about 2 minutes left.
All right, great. My connection is shaky, so if I sound like a robot or you can't hear me, text it in the chat and I will definitely correct. First off, it's great to see everyone here. Thanks again to Kaylee for inviting me to do a presentation on just the general introduction on the Graduate and Professional Student Association. So my name is Schönn Franklin. As Kaylee has said, I use he, him pronouns, and I also was the president of the 71st Assembly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some basic facts about the GPSA and then open up for questions if you have them. So the GPSA's mission is fivefold. So the mission of the GPSA in striving to enrich the experience of the graduate and professional students shall be to provide a unified and informed voice representing graduate and professional students to the university and all of the units that are encompassed within it, a forum to address ideas and concerns of graduate and professional students, supportive scholarly activities and professional development, leadership, social and service opportunities to graduate and professional students, and events and activities to promote a sense of community among graduate and professional students and their families that promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. This mission, word for word, can be found in our Constitution in Article 2. We are governed by all university policies and guidelines. Just as an example, we're governed by the Office of Student Conduct's Student Code of Conduct and their policies, the Office of Associated Student Accounts, and by the University Park Student Fee Board. We have created and adopted a GPSA Constitution. And when I send this link out in Slack, you'll be able to see the link that I've clicked here for you to peruse at your liking. We also have created and adopted GPSA bylaws that we regularly update as well. And again, the link will be here also. We also have an unofficial GPSA delegate handbook, and that includes some soft knowledge, things like what activities have we done in the past, what has and has not worked, what are some of the norms that the GPSA has that aren't spoken rules, but they're there, and that's coming. And lastly, we are governed by Robert's Rules of Order. So abject, so moved, seconded, all of that. I'm going to create a cheat sheet for everyone to be able to see what are some of the things that you can say, how would you operate in an official meeting of the GPSA. Let's get into the organizational chart. So the GPSA is set up very, very similarly to the United States government. We have a legislative branch, which we call the Assembly of Delegates. We have an executive component, or the executive branch, and a judicial component comprised of the judiciary. In the next few slides, I'm going to go through in reverse order. I'm going to go through the branches and then some of the things that they're responsible for doing, okay? So the first is the organizational chart for the executive branch. The executive branch is run by the president, the CEO of the GPSA. They are responsible for the mission and vision of the GPSA and ensuring that the GPSA's executive administrative components are up and running. Under the GPSA president is the GPSA vice president. The GPSA's vice president is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the executive branch. Under the vice president, we have 3 departments. Each department is run by an executive director. So we have the Department of Communications run by the executive director, the Department of Finance run by the executive director, and the Department of External Affairs run by the executive director. Each of these each of these departments have the ability to have staff as needed. And all of the information on how that takes place is in our Constitution. Let's dive into some of these components as well. So as I said, the president is the chief executive officer of the GPSA. So that person, Jada Quinlan, is responsible for the GPSA's execution of its mission and vision. The Jada is responsible for being the primary spokesperson for all graduate and professional students at the Pennsylvania State University's University Park campus. The president has the authority to submit legislation on behalf of the executive branch to the Assembly of Delegates for approval as needed. The president is also responsible for presiding over executive branch meetings, and as such is responsible for the organization and execution of the executive branch. The vice president, as I said, is the chief of staff of the president. They're responsible for monitoring the day-to-day operations of the executive branch's responsibilities to ensure effectiveness. They're responsible for running the General Assembly meetings. They fulfill the duties of the president when the president is unable to for a whole host of reasons. Next is the Department of Communications. As the name indicates, they are responsible for managing the GPSA's office and distribution of materials from the office, maintaining official communications, publishing a regular newsletter to showcase the work of the GPSA and highlight opportunities to get involved, administering formal communications to the graduate and professional student body, facilitating essential communications within the 3 branches of the GPSA, recording and publicizing special presentations, and taking and publicizing minutes for all assembly and executive branch meetings. The finance department is responsible for managing the income and expenditures with the Associated Student Activities Office, the Associated Student Activities Office, in line with the decisions of the GPSA. They're also responsible for regulating, maintaining, and keeping account of all tangible assets purchased through funds of the GPSA. And lastly, they're responsible for the GPSA's financial budgets, documents, and presentations. And as I said before, they're led by the Executive Director of Finance. Next, we have the External Affairs Department, which is led by the Executive Director of External Affairs. They're responsible for developing and establishing relationships with stakeholders and units at Penn State that service or impact graduate and professional students. They're also responsible for partnering with GPSA delegates to host tabling events to increase graduate and professional students' awareness of the GPSA. They are responsible for overseeing all outreach efforts and maintaining a list of organizations and contacts which may be useful for further collaboration with the GPSA. They will be the department that manages the GPSA's liaisons, which are people that go in between the GPSA and other organizations on campus and working with them. This will be their responsibility as directed by the vice president. They're also responsible for contributing to the regular newsletter housed in the Department of Communications. Next is the Judiciary. The Judiciary is comprised of 3 justices. The 3 justices together will vote, and one of the 3 will be the Chief Justice. The Judiciary is responsible for conducting hearings. Conducting hearings and rulings related to the relating to the GPSA. They're also responsible for reviewing all constitutional amendments. They're responsible for hearing impeachment cases and also internal elections and appointments. They're also responsible for administering the annual graduate and professional student body elections. Next and last is the Assembly of Delegates. The speaker is in charge and is the chief officer of the Assembly of Delegates. Under the speaker, there are 4 committees: internal development, student engagement, advocacy and diversity, and professional development. They all have different responsibilities that are, and their responsibilities are in the names. The Graduate Council Student Caucus is a caucus of students who represent the GPSA and all graduate and professional students at the Graduate Council. They all have voting privileges within the Assembly of Delegates, and they together will select their own chair of the Graduate Council Student Caucus. The Internal Development Committee very quickly is tasked with improving the GPSA's policies and procedures and all other internal matters to ensure the well-being of GPSA and its members. And examples of this would be crafting and reviewing all bylaws and constitutional amendments and resolutions. Next is professional development. and they're responsible for fulfilling the GPSA's mission as it relates to providing support of scholarly activities and professional development. Examples of these are writing boot camps and inviting industrial leaders to speak at Penn State. Next is Advocacy and Diversity, which is responsible for fulfilling the GPSA's mission as it relates to providing a forum to address concerns within graduate and professional student bodies. This includes addressing student concerns and promoting advocacy and diversity, equity, and inclusion by advocating for policies or initiatives to outside parties within the university. And examples of this would be the Pride Brunch and the Diversity Seminar. The last slide is student engagement. Student engagement is responsible for fulfilling the mission as it relates to providing programming, initiatives, and service opportunities that promote a sense of community and engagement, both within and outside of the graduate student body. And examples of this would be the blood drive, the winter ball, the recruitment tabling events, and also the grad cup. So I've thrown a lot at you, and I want to stop sharing screen and also stop talking and give you the opportunity to ask questions as needed.
Can I ask Kaylee? Am I good?
Yes, sorry. I was trying to find the button to unmute myself. You're up. You got it.
If we have any questions in the future, I don't right now. Are you open to that communication?
Of course. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this in the Slack channel, general chat, because it has a whole bunch of knowledge. I know I threw a lot at you in 10 minutes. So definitely, I'm going to have it in there so that you have it for reference. And also, I'll drop my email, my personal email, in case you want to ask me questions about it. So absolutely.
Any other questions for Schönn? Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing, Schönn. That was great. Yeah, and a bunch of good stuff to know. And also thank you so much for helping with the transition as much as you have. Really appreciate that.